Mary Lou McDonald, please.
Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle Taoiseach. Speaking on the radio yesterday morning, you described questions regarding the ownership of the new National Maternity Hospital as a red herring. Taoiseach, that's a very unfair characterisation of very genuine concerns grounded in decades of women's experiences of healthcare in this state. And your dismissal of these concerns is particularly disappointing, given that your comments preempt Oireachtas' examination of the government proposal. The process and the debate to take place this week at the Health Committee and in the Dáil is undermined when the head of government brushes aside the central questions before the scrutiny even begins. Why bother, Taoiseach, allowing for scrutiny of the proposals at all if you present the current deal as a fait accompli and say that the government will press ahead with the plan regardless of the outcome of Oireachtas' deliberations? That's the wrong way to deal with this issue, Taoiseach. The government proposes to invest between €800 million and €1 billion of taxpayers' money in the building of a new and much needed national maternity hospital. It simply makes sense that the land on which this hospital is to be built is owned by the state. That means a very clean transaction whereby the land is transferred directly to the state. That was the original plan. So why now instead do we get this convoluted, messy ownership structure? I think the answer to that question is all about the financial power of the land. It's about the St. Vincent's Healthcare Group retaining control of the land so it can use the value of it as leverage for future financial transactions. So it's about private interests of this group trumping the public good and a government that is willing to let this happen. And you can talk all day about the land costing only a tenner a year, but what you don't say is that the St. Vincent's Health Group retains the right to impose a rent of €850,000 a year if there is a dispute about the operation of the hospital in the future. And that, Taoiseach, gives the private landlord very significant leverage and control, and it most certainly does not amount to public ownership, as you have claimed. Genuine concerns have also been expressed about the lack of clarity regarding the definition of clinical appropriateness in the legal documents. And while the Minister says that he has legal guarantees, it will be, remembered, judges and not politicians who will adjudicate any potential dispute and any legal interpretation of this. So for this and other reasons, the ownership of this site is not a red herring, Taoiseach. Everybody wants this new hospital and we want it built quickly, but we need to get it right. Taoiseach, is sé an rud is cíalmhara nó go dógfar an Ospedéal Maithreachas nua Hallaimh Puiblí. Is sé seo an bailach is fear chun na himní atá Guine Maidir na nabh splóchas clinicúil an Ospedéal a Laidú, agus chun inestíoch Húntasach an stóid I gcuireann sláinte forrásach nua aimsire de bhaná a cosint. So this convoluted, complex ownership model is the wrong footing on which to proceed. What we need is a public maternity hospital built on public land, and this still can be done. So Taoiseach, I want to put it to you. Will you, along with the Taoiseach and the Minister for Health, now get around the table with St. Vincent's Healthcare Group and convince them to transfer the land directly to the state, as was the original plan and the original commitment from the Sisters of Charity?
Taoiseach, please.
But I first of all say that the one thing that undermines public debate on this issue is honesty of approach. I genuinely say we need honesty and we need a full focus on the facts. And we shouldn't play politics with this because it's too important. It's too important for women's health. It's too important for premature babies that will be born into the future and who need a first-class neonatal facility. And that's what the new hospital will do. It will go from 35 neonatal beds to 50. You won't have the same confinement as we have in the current hospital. The current hospital isn't fit for purpose. Since 2013, this has been mooted. We're now 2022. nearly 9 years later, and you want to delay it another few years, and don't seem to want to get what is a modern maternity hospital built. And it'll take some years yet to get it built once we get sanction. But honesty is important in the debate, and for you to come in and suggest that a 300-year lease at a nominal rate of €10 a year is somehow not ownership is being dishonest. I have to be clear about that. I don't like saying this, but there's only so much of nonsense can be accommodated here in respect of the ownership question. The ownership is not an issue here. And if you don't listen to me, that's fine. But listen to the senior midwives of the hospital, who've asked all politicians, government and opposition, to listen to the clinicians in the hospital. And I have the letter here from the senior midwives of the National Maternity Hospital, who are very clear that future service users require and deserve state-of-the-art infrastructure and facilities, and we urge all political parties in government and opposition to listen to the clinical staff delivering the service and to approve this project without further delay. Signed by Mary Brosnan and quite a number of more, Director of Midwifery and Nursing and other Assistant Directors of Midwifery and Nursing, which have signed. And these are people who are there at the coalface every day, dealing with the clinical realities, dealing with the unacceptable situation at Holles Street right now. And in this morning's Irish Examiner, there was a column written by Fergus Finlay, for example, a member of the HSE board, who gave some illustration of the detailed consideration given by the HSE board and the Audit and Risk Committee of the HSE board in respect of this hospital and all of the documentation and the guarantees. And he is a person, irrespective of politics, who would not sign off on any deal that would compromise healthcare for women, or indeed that would allow any religious ethos to have any influence whatsoever on a maternity hospital. I'd ask you to accept that, Deputy. I mean, the 300 years at a tenner a year, and you mentioned the condition. The condition is they have to build a maternity hospital, essentially. And if they but if that's what we're all about, building a maternity hospital. What other business have the HSE doing if they're not going to build a maternity hospital here or facilitate the construction of a maternity hospital with neonatal? So let's be honest, it's €10 for 300 years. That is the deal. It's leasehold. It's not going to be a cardiology hospital. It's not going to be any other type hospital. It's going to be a maternity hospital. So I'm pleading for people to at least read the documentation, not try and distort it. I'm not saying you've distorted the documentation, but quite a lot have now. And what you come up with now is, convoluted this and convoluted that. But the bottom line is this: it's not our land, never was our land. We now have a gift of the land, essentially, 300 years at a tenner a year. That is the reality. And you understand leasehold too. You do, Deputy Conlan. You know damn well what I'm saying is the truth. It is the truth, what I'm saying. But for politics and for fighting other battles, there are other battles being fought here through this hospital issue. But I'm just concerned and focused entirely on women and premature babies that will be born into the future. They need the best healthcare we can give them, and this is the best opportunity we can take now to give them that.
Deputy McDonald.
Well, let's have facts and honesty then, shall we? Holles Street is certainly not fit for purpose, and it's not fit for purpose, Taoiseach, because of underinvestment by government after government after government. And by the way, it's even worse than just that. It's not just Holles Street, because the Rotunda and all of our maternity services are similarly under pressure, and similarly government after government after government look the other way. And what makes it even worse again is that government after government in the history of this state colluded with religious dogma to deny us as women what we were entitled to by the way of healthcare. So when we raise these questions, legitimate, well-founded questions, in a spirit of honesty, we do that born of bitter, bitter experience and a determination that that will never happen again. Now, you've talked about a tenner a year for 300 years. You're trying to pass that off as public ownership. You say that the land was gifted. The crux of this issue is that the land has not been gifted. So let me put my question again, Karen Corla,
please, you're over time.
to ask the Taoiseach, along with the Taoiseach and the Minister of Health, to go back to the St. Vincent's Healthcare Group, who you say have no ulterior motive in the building of this hospital. Let's take them on their word and say to them, make this a clean transaction and gift and transfer that site to the state. And in one fell swoop, all of the concerns are resolved. How about that, Taoiseach? Will you do that, yes or no?
Taoiseach. Mine is this, Deputy. It is ownership by the state of this hospital. And you just refuse to accept that and are creating an issue that does not merit the prioritisation that you've given it in the context of this debate. Because a 300-year lease at €10 a year is not is ownership by any other name. That is a fact. And anybody who understands anything about property law knows that. Now, the real issue is this. The real issue is this. You have instanced in terms of investment in healthcare. We want to make this. This government is in place 2 years. This represents a significant advance on what was on the table in 2016 by the previous government in terms of the Mulvey Agreement. So this is a very significant advance in terms of the constitution of the hospital, in terms of the operational licence from the HSE to the hospital, in terms of the representation from the state via the Minister 3 nominees, and all of the legal guarantees that are there in terms of clinical independence, financial independence, and operational independence of the hospital. You know all that. You know all that. But it suits the opposition to delay this project, it seems to me, at this stage. I'm not, because I don't know, other than politics. You're playing politics with every issue that comes before the House, Deputy. Every issue, for whatever it is, you just want to weigh up. How can you undermine the government of the day on any issue now? It doesn't even have to be the maternity hospital. Because you can't have it both ways all of the time.
Time is up, Taoiseach.
We've got to get moving. We've got to get moving. I think we should get the hospital built. I think it's the best thing to do, and we have the guarantees to underpin it.
Look, the women of Ireland require us to conduct our business in an orderly fashion on their behalf. Please, please.